Welcome back to another episode of Better Than I Found It, the podcast all things college golf. You're listening to Mike McGraw, the men's golf coach at Baylor University. Today I welcome back an old friend, former Baylor golfer and assistant coach, Mikkel Bjerch-Andresen. We catch up on his life since returning to his home country of Norway back in May of 23 following the NCAA championship. He gives us his synopsis on the impact he feels Viktor Hovland has had on golf in Norway over the last few years. And he talks about how much he's enjoyed following former Baylor golfer Johnny Keefer in his early pro career this past summer and the pride he takes in following Johnny as he continues on his journey. Finally, we talk about a newsletter he's been doing for quite some time that hits on many subjects related to college golf. One of them, college golf recruiting. He's done several episodes on that. Also, he talks about some data he learned on college golf rosters. And with the looming roster limits legislation coming up, that should be very telling, as well as some scoring data that I find particularly interesting. Mikkel's not just a great coach, he's also brilliant at data analysis, and he uses this skill in his coaching. He also happens to be a great Baylor Bear and a good friend of mine. I hope you enjoy. Okay, Better Than I Found It listeners, let's give a big welcome to former Baylor golfer and former Baylor assistant coach, Mikkel Bjerch-Andresen. Mikkel, you're a long way away from me, but you're close to our hearts all the time. It's great to have you here.
Like hearing that, Coach. Thank you. It's good seeing you, and it's good to hear from you.
Absolutely. You know, long time Better Than I Found It listeners that may or may not be near Baylor golf or whatever will remember you from probably the first 30 or 40 episodes back in 2020 and early 21, because you were right in the middle of it. You were helping me drive the early days of the podcast, and I really appreciate that. I don't know how much I appreciate it because it's been 222 weeks in a row now, and I think that's your fault.
I think I told you in like a pre-chat here that I am impressed by the streak, but I'm not surprised, if that makes sense. I know Chris, one of your managers, who's doing a great job, has been a great help, but I'm just impressed that you guys are kind of, making the puzzle fit somehow to get the recordings and everything. But I'm not surprised because, they're really good. I still listen. And you're my friend and we started this together and all that, but I think they're really good, so I'm just thankful that you're doing them, and I think you feel the same way and people who listen to them, so that's really cool. And then you're such a street guy, so it doesn't surprise me, and it's probably gonna keep going for a long time. I hope so anyways.
Well, I hope so as well, and I want to say publicly thank you for helping me get it started. And I still get something from every guest. Every guest gives me something. I'm going, wow, I'm glad I heard that. And I get comments every single week from young coaches, veteran coaches, people that just follow college golf closely. It's like, wow, I'm glad you had that guy on this week, or he's great. And then I get a lot of people that give me suggestions. Hey, why don't you do Coach so-and-so, or this thought or this theme. So we don't have a large listenership. I think you remember it wasn't too large, but it's very loyal. And you're one of those loyal listeners, so thank you.
Yeah, it's good stuff. You need to summarize this into a book someday.
Yeah, I've got another book in the works. It's if I get energetic, I'll really work hard on it this winter. My hope is November 1st through about February 1st to give it 2 or 3 months of good attention. Hopefully I can get it further down the road, but definitely there's a lot that have been in these podcasts that are going to be included in that book for sure.
I'll get it out in Norwegian bookstores for you.
Do I have to translate it into Norwegian?
No, we know English over here.
Okay, well, that's good
It's all
of you.
good.
We don't know Norwegian over here, so there you go.
No, you definitely don't.
I don't. Hey, tell me this. Catch me up on Hannah, Axel, and Anders, your family. How's everything going with that? Because we don't get to see you very much.
Everything is going great. We've been here probably 16 or so. We less, but everything's going great. Hannah's doing real well. She landed a job right away and at a really good spot. Been really enjoying that. And yeah, we've just been getting friend. There's tons of kids around us, so that's easy. The kids are thriving. So, and Axel just turned 5, and he's just kind of turned a corner a little bit on becoming more of a boy, less of a toddler. Just bit more patient and things like that. But we're still in the small kids' life. Anders is 2.5. And so our days start early and they're long and fun, but time still goes by fast in a way. So we just try to be outside, do different things, and we've had a lot of good times together.
Yeah, you say that something kind of glossed right over it there, but stay outside. I think there's less and less of that with computers nowadays and cell phones and video games and different things. Kids just don't get outside nearly enough. And in your home country, I knew when you moved back over there, that was one thing you were going to try to do was stay outside with your boys. And you obviously have done that.
Yeah, and I think we've been fortunate. Like there's some friends and neighbors living right next to us and stuff that are kind of the same, cut from the same cloth a little bit. So that's really fun. That I mean, sometimes it's crazy. You have bad nights, kids sleep poorly or whatever, but then your neighbors and friends are in the same boats. You're outside eating breakfast at like 7 a.m. But yeah, we just try to do fun things, and that's exactly um, kind of the most important thing to me is just spending time with them, and we've gotten to do that a lot. So that's been really, really good.
So one other thing that kids in America we don't experience, and that is you're getting ready to lose daylight. I mean, like tomorrow is a day when you probably have daylight. I mean, you don't have very much daylight. It's getting dark very early right now, correct?
Yeah, fall is coming quickly right now. I guess it depends where in the States you are, like up in Alaska and stuff. I don't know the longitude up there, but we're pretty far north, obviously. So the season is done here. The junior golf season's done. My home club closed last week, and yeah, things are definitely turning into winter. I just changed tires a few days ago in my car, so we're prepping for it. Not good golf stuff, and not a fun time for golf, but it's fun for other things like skiing, and just getting change of season is good too.
Well, your last few years in the United States, when you were at Texas Tech, and then when you came here to Baylor for 3 years, you got into running big time, and I know that you ran a marathon in 2:58. Have you beaten that time? Are you still running? And do you have a marathon coming up?
um, I should, because my best friend is in the shape of his life right now, and his only target in life is to beat my marathon time at 2:58. So I really should. My training's been good like last month or two, but over the summer it was not. We had 3 weeks vacation with the kids, and the running kind of went out the window.
Hmm.
But I have not run a better marathon because I have not run a marathon since that time. I've run the Oslo half about a year ago, which I ran in 1:20 and was very happy with that. And then I ran a local 10K out where I live. That was in May, and I ran it in 36, I think. But that was my last race. So I need to find something, maybe come back over to Texas and run a fast one like Houston or something, and see you guys and have something to train for soon.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I've always appreciated that when we would be showing up for the day before the practice round, driving from the airport to the hotel, you started pointing out areas, well, that looks like a good trail and whatever. And you'd
Yeah.
get up at 5 in the morning and go out and run 10 miles.
Yeah, just an early midlife crisis a little bit.
That's okay. That's okay. How old are
Yeah,
you now? How old are you?
32, coach.
32. Golly, I remember 32. I think Bill Clinton was in the White House, I think.
Wow,
So
it's a long time ago.
it's a long time ago. He's about Donald Trump's age, so let's not get political here. Anyway, we'll move
Yeah,
on.
let's
Okay.
pass
Hey,
on that.
we'll pass on that. Hey,
Yeah.
tell me, what have you been up to relative to golf? I know you're still connected to golf, so tell my listeners how Mikkel is actually connected to golf, even though you're not in the golf world right now.
Yes, I have a regular job still as an analyst, which is very fun and it's predictable and it's been really good. But I do some things in golf, that's right. I do work some for Vang, which is sort of it's one of two main sports high schools here in Oslo. It's where Viktor went, Christopher Ventura, and like Bård Skogen, who played for Texas Tech, and some others. So I do work a little bit for them, and I do it on sort of full day camps and every once in a while morning sessions or afternoon sessions with the players. So that's been very fun. Uh, I would say there's roughly like 20 kids when we have the practices, and there's also a middle school sort of connected to that. So that's really cool because they're athletes with aspirations. And then I coach privately as well. So I have about 10 players that are all in different stages of golf. There's some juniors, there's a few college players, and a couple pro players. And so a lot of those are remote, obviously, and then they kind of come in and we work sort of like camp style a little bit when they're here in Oslo. So that's fun as well. But I'm kind of I don't have capacity for more right now, but it's really cool to follow up players and kind of be part of their journey. So I'm very happy with the balance I have because it doesn't take me too much away from home and it works with my job and all that stuff right now. So that's cool. And then, you know, what you wanted to talk to me about is I have done some writing and yeah, just kind of pick some data here and there and look into certain things that sort of interest me. And usually they go hand in hand with my coaching or something I'm looking into. So that's kind of more of a side project I do when I have time or after the kids have gone to bed and I'm curious about something.
Yeah, I am going to talk to you about this newsletter that you've got that I've read several of them and I think they're great. First of all, you're a good writer. And I think that's underrated nowadays. I mean, we write in text messages and tweets and TikTok and whatever. Everything you do nowadays, most by and large people do is kind of chopped up, little short snippets, and then they move on to the next thing. You actually are a really good writer, and I enjoy reading your newsletters. But before we get to that, you mentioned junior golf. You're still connected a little bit. You do have some camps, and you said Viktor and Christopher Ventura and Bart Skogen, and obviously Viktor's impact on junior golf, amateur golf, the ability for kids to want to come over and play college golf has been great. What's Viktor's impact in Norway in golf? Because we're now 3 or 4 years in, or 5 years in, to his true impact. And I compare it a little bit. I know this is a strong statement, but to what Arnold Palmer did in general for the game of golf. I think Viktor's been close to that in Norway. Am I wrong? Am I reading that wrong?
No, I think you're right, coach. It's a really cool time to be in golf in Norway. We've had star players before. We've had Suzanne Pedersen for a long time. And we've had Henrik Bjornstad was a PGA Tour player. He had his card for a few years. We've had some players on the European Tour, but nobody has really broken through. I mean, Suzanne Pedersen is comparable, but it didn't have the same impact as now because of COVID. People started playing a ton of golf. There's a new wave of golfers in Norway, and it's just crazy. Like everybody around my age, for example, that I work with in my real job, are into golf now, and they just started golf in the last 2, 3, 4 years. So that has coincided exactly with Viktor's rise, and it's just booming. It's absolutely booming. And now Christopher Ventura got his PGA Tour card back. There's some really interesting young golfers as well, and also on the women's side. So it's just booming. And I think Viktor is such a good role model. I mean, everybody roots for him. You see him smiling, you see the passion he has, the joy he has for golf, yet you kind of see the game bother him a bit. Like he's like very detail oriented. He's kind of hard on himself. So he's the perfect role model because you kind of see both sides to him. And yeah, it's just really cool. Like everybody's walking around with Lindeberg clothes and ping hats here now and want to be the next Victor.
You mentioned that the game bothers him sometimes, but it's so fun to watch how he tackles his weaknesses. So when he was in college, and I remember Alan Bratton caddying for him in a U.S. Open and a U.S. Am and some other things when he won the U.S. Amateur. Um, and his short game was really not very good. He didn't chip it very well at all, but he
Yeah.
talked about it directly. He didn't shy
Yeah.
away from it. I think it's one of the greatest lessons he could have taught young players, young tour players or young college players or juniors. It's like, don't shy away from what you don't do well. Attack it. Go get it. What do you think about that approach he's taken?
I love it. And I think that's what like people kind of see themselves in him a little bit. He's a superstar that's also personable and he has fun with it at the same time as he's working really hard. Like you can see all the sides to him. And yeah, he's just a perfect guy for us. And it's a really, really fun time in Norwegian golf.
Well, and I know that right now you made a decision to leave college golf and go back to your home country of Norway to raise two boys and
Yep.
have a good quality of life for your family. And I'll always applaud you for that. I think it's probably going to go down as one of the best decisions you've ever made in your life. So, congratulations on that again. But I know there's going to come a time when your boys are old enough that maybe you want to become more connected and more involved with golf. And I know that I'm speculating, but I think one day I think you'll be running things in Norwegian golf. Am I wrong? Tell me.
We'll see about that. I don't think that's for me to answer, but yeah, of course, like I love golf and um I miss college golf a lot. Like I miss you, I miss the guys, I miss the team, I miss competing, all that. At the same time, like I knew I would miss it, if that makes sense. Like
Hmm.
that is not why we made this decision. So I'm very happy with the decision we've made, and I'm very happy with the balance of everything right now because I don't know, just as a millennial dad with two young boys, it's hard because you're expected to, but you also want to be really present for your kids. And it's just hard, like doing anything else, especially when you're traveling, because they're just at front and center of everything you do. Everybody that's had kids knows this. I mean, it's completely unpredictable, and you really need to be present to do a good job for them. So it's hard just having like a regular job, honestly, and raising kids. So I'm very happy with the balance, and while they're young, I think this is sort of a balance that I'm wanting. But obviously, I'm involved in golf and really enjoy coaching the athletes that I do. Um, it's nothing's more fun than being a part of a player's journey in the game. And I'm really happy and thankful that I get to do that and still sort of be in balance with both my job and this. So while the kids are young, I can't see it happening. I can't see myself traveling much more. But of course, like longer term perspective, yes, this is where my heart is at and this is where my passion is. So hopefully, but who knows? Right now, I'm very happy.
Well, I love that. And the balance you spoke of is really, really important. I sometimes got out of balance as a coach. Pam, my wonderful wife, will tell you that. But, you said a player's journey, walking alongside a player on his journey. So you got to work alongside Johnny Keefer for 3 years of Baylor golf, and you didn't get to see his fifth year at Baylor. And then you haven't seen personally what he did on the PGA Tour Americas this summer, and even finishing a month ago 13th in his first PGA Tour event. What was it like for you from Norway watching Johnny's ascent up pro golf after college?
I think I have to say the same thing as I said about your podcast streak, like very impressive, but not surprising. Um, Johnny doesn't have many holes in his game. He's a very complete player. When he struggled, I think my second year at Baylor, it was mainly due to like errant drives, but he didn't like lose his game completely or anything like that. And yeah, he went through some equipment things, and there were like sort of a transition period for him. Um, but once he got through that, he doesn't have many holes in his game, and he's very level-headed and confident in the way that he goes about his game, the way he competes. He he hits it far and straight, hits his irons really good. He's a great wedge player. Short game is fantastic, and he rolls the rock. Like
Hmm.
he's got it all. So it doesn't surprise me. What does surprise me is I listened to your podcast with him, and I think you said his scoring average was 66.0. Is that right?
Yes, that summer.
That is just unbelievable. Um, but yeah, it's been so fun to watch the scores. I've sent a few texts to him here and there, but try not to bother him too much, obviously. And but it's just been really fun. And I think I said this to a few of my players, like these comparisons are always hard, but I think he's playing like one of the best players in the world. I mean, where you put that cutoff, top 50 or whatever, I don't know, but to win a tour like that, when you kind of start from behind a little bit, start a little bit later, and in the fashion that he's done it and played so consistently, he's playing really, really, really good. And yeah, it's been really fun.
It's been fun. And the thing about a coach that makes coaching so enjoyable is he's chasing his dream. And that was his dream since long before you and I met him. But now you get to watch from afar, and I'm watching it from afar. I haven't seen him hit a golf shot competitively since the national championship. But we
Yeah,
get to still be on that journey, knowing you were a small part of that journey, but you
yeah,
were a part of that journey. And I think it's really cool. And Johnny's such an easy guy to pull for. I just feel like when
yes,
he wins on the PGA Tour, it's going to be similar to Victor,
yep.
because I think he will win on the PGA Tour.
I totally agree. And then one other thing on that, like I've started coaching another kid this summer, and we were out playing, and somehow it came up like that we used to play different formats in qualifying. And he was very interested in that because he's going to college next year and whatnot. And so it's like, yeah, actually, I have the score sheet. So I like pulled up the old score sheet that I did in a spreadsheet. Remember those
Oh yeah.
scoring sheets?
Oh yeah.
And without knowing that this was probably like June or July or something, we were playing. So Johnny had started playing professional golf, but not completely taken off yet. And he looks at the sheet, like he kind of walks down the fairway, looks at it on my phone. And like 2 minutes later, he's like, "Who's Johnny Keefer?" It's like, "Oh, you're about to know who Johnny Keefer is." Because he like saw these like formats where we played cart path, OB, irons only, half set. We played the red tees, Johnny shot whatever, and just red scores the entire way. And I think when you're with a player every day for such an extended period of time, you see it, like, and when you look at scores like that, you sort of see it. Johnny just had a period of time in college there where he didn't quite get it out on the course, but it was always there.
Yeah, yeah, it's funny just to see that progression. It's funny a kid like that would notice but he did shoot some low scores. Wow, he did.
Yep.
So I wish I wish more people would not be afraid of shooting a low score. It's like the best thing you can do. It's like that's what you're out there for, right?
I wish I wasn't afraid of it, coach.
Yeah, you and I both we have a job for a reason, all right? So we will always.
Exactly.
All right, let's get back to your newsletters. Th Those are something that have kept you connected to golf, and it's a way for you to sort of remain relevant in a coaching world, if you will, because you have good
Yep.
information. So I think you can put out about 10 that are very, very recruiting 101, if you will, but they're very simple things. But I know you surveyed a bunch of coaches, college coaches. What are the main takeaways or most interesting findings or perspectives you got from that?
Okay, yeah. So I started writing just out of like an outlet for me because and I'll get to the college coaching thing, but just to kind of explain how it started, I started coaching a couple junior players here in Norway. And I was just like looking into the scoring on the Norwegian junior tour. And I had a couple like ideas of what I would find. And I did find those things and kind of crunched the numbers on some of the scoring data. And we'll get to that later. But that's how I thought about, okay, now I've done sort of this analysis. I should sort of put it in a write-up somehow. And that's how this started. Uh, and that's how I started writing this newsletter on Substack and started the thread and whatnot. And then, so when it comes to the college coaches thing, it's also like an outlet for me, um, just to respond to a lot of the inquiries that I get here now. Like I am a former college coach. I lived 12 years in the States and I moved back to Norway. And so I get a lot of questions from junior players here, men and women. I get questions from their parents and a lot about college and especially about college recruiting. And so I've done like a little bit of consulting, even though it's not my favorite thing to do, to be honest. Like my favorite thing to do is coach, but I've done a little bit of the consulting thing. And I also just reply to a bunch of text messages, phone calls, people who have questions. I try to help whoever reaches out. And so I sort of have my own opinions on how you should write an email, how you should talk to coaches, all that stuff, because I've been on the other side. Um, but I thought like, hey, why don't I just ask a bunch of other coaches, like if they agree with me with a bunch of the stuff? And why don't I also sort of back my own word or contradict my own word by what other coaches say about the recruiting process, about what they look for and stuff? So I made up a survey and I put it kind of together. It didn't take too long for you guys to fill out. You filled it out for me, and more than 50 other coaches did as well. And it probably took you 3 to 5 minutes or something to fill out. But
Well, probably longer for me, but for normal people, 3 to 5
yeah,
minutes.
so for rules followers like Coach McGraw, it probably took like 10 minutes. And then some other coaches might have cut some corners or whatever. But the point is that I got a lot of good info, from over 50 coaches, and I asked questions about the recruiting process basically. And then I put them into chapters in my newsletter, and I've made it to where I can sort of have an ebook to where when people reach out, I can give my opinion on what they should do in recruiting, but I can also tell you, hey, this is what coaches say. Like these are the things they're looking for, and maybe you should look into what you should do in your first email, or how you should treat social media, or what you should say on the first phone call. So that's kind of the purpose of it all.
That's great. Yeah, it's very interesting reading. And for somebody probably who doesn't know anything about college recruiting, it's amazing information because it gives them a starting point. So I would encourage all listeners that have young kids that are getting into the recruiting process to look into that data. The other thing is you crunch numbers about as well as anybody I've ever seen. And I always enjoyed that. And you are good at that. So have you done some scoring data crunching that you'd like to share that I think would be interesting for people?
Yeah, sure. So some of the things, actually, Coach, should I cover just a few of the recruiting things that have come out
Sure.
of it?
Yeah,
If
absolutely.
if
Yeah.
we go back to that, maybe cut it there.
Yeah, go. You're good.
Okay, so on the recruiting data, so what I've kind of come out of these surveys is, like I said, over 50 coaches have responded. And of course, this is not a perfectly scientific survey or study of any sort, but it gives a good indication on a lot of things. So most responds were men's coaches, and most responds were head coaches. But I did have representations from all divisions, assistants, head coaches, all that stuff. And so some of the interesting things that came out, the first thing is just the sheer volume of emails that coaches get. And so one of the questions I asked is, how many emails would you estimate you receive weekly? Recruiting emails, new recruiting emails. And the range varied from 3 to 150 weekly.
Hmm.
And the average was 42 emails a week. So that's the first thing kind of informing recruits that your competition is steep, and you got to find a way to stand out. I also asked, where do coaches read these emails? And over 80% of coaches first read their emails on their phone. So maybe you should tailor your email to not be too long, or it should be to the point, because you should just visualize a coach sitting in their van or walking out to a hole in the practice round, reading your email that comes in. don't picture them sitting quietly, peacefully at their desk, ready to devour every word that you're going to say about your journey in the game so far. And then I asked, what should you include in the first email? And this is a very common theme throughout a lot of the answers from coaches. First, they listed scores, obviously. Coaches need to know your scores. But the number 2 and number 3 sentiments from coaches were that it's A, personally written, and B, that the recruit knows something about my school. And when coaches answer other questions later in the survey, such as what's a red flag? What would you like to be asked in an opening phone call? Do you have any generic recruiting advice? A lot of it is down to that you have a personal connection to the coach, that it's personally written and it's from you, not your parent, not somebody else, that you have a genuine interest and show a genuine interest in the school. And that's sort of what I've been trying to preach here. So that's nice that other coaches sort of feel the same. So those are some of the main things that kind of stood out from the survey. And like I said, I've covered things such as like, how should you treat social media? How can you make it as easy as possible for the coaches out there? What should you avoid, such as red flags? How should parental involvement be? And there's chapters on kind of those things and what coaches answered.
You bring up a great point right there. Parents want so desperately to help their children do a good job on the email, so it makes a good impression on the coach, and so they become a big part of it. But the fact is, once that kid gets on campus, you're going to have thousands of conversations with this kid over a 4-year period that the parents won't be involved in. So you need to go ahead and start that process earlier, where it's just you and the prospect.
Yep, exactly. So, and there were some other good things, like in some of the chapters, I actually listed all of the coaches' responses. Now they're anonymous, so you won't see which coach it's from, but there's a lot of good things in them as well. Just, for example, the open-ended recruiting advice from coaches. There were a lot of really good comments, and yeah, a lot of good things came out of it, I think.
Well done. I think it's good information, and I think the volume of it will be great for people. You touch every subject that was regarding recruiting, so it's great. Okay, so I jumped ahead of the game there a little bit and got ahead, but I do want to get back to the scoring data because you are really good at that. Talk to me about some of the crunching numbers you've done.
Sure. Like I said earlier, like it kind of started out of a need or like an interest for me because of the players I'm around here and trying to help. So I started by crunching all of the scoring data for the Norwegian Junior Tour and found that first thing I found is that first round scoring averages were higher than the following rounds 2 and 3. And that was a little bit of my theory. Now, there were only 8 or 9 tournaments, so whether it's valid or if it's just a coincidence, I don't know. So I looked into the AJGA scoring average as well. And to not make it too complicated on myself, because there are just hundreds of AJGA tournaments, I only picked out the what are the premium tournaments called again? The invitationals?
Yes, invitationals.
So I looked at those and found the same pattern. So it's pretty like it suggests that first round scoring averages are higher in junior golf than the rounds after. And so I kind of write a little bit about my theories as to why that is. It definitely has something to do with preparation, but also like how ready you are technically and mentally to start like right out of the gates. And I looked for the same trend in both regional scoring data in college, didn't find the same thing. And also I looked on the PGA Tour and kind of excluded where the cut is and stuff like that, and didn't really find a prevalent trend to that as well. So, but it's still interesting. Like my theory is that at the lower the level of golf, the more of a delta there will be. and you can really come out of the gates and be ready to play in the first round and pick up easy strokes. And I think it's true for a lot of occasions in college golf as well. And this was one of my like theories when I was a coach, and I know we've talked about this to our teams when we coached together about four counting scores and picking up strokes on the field in the first round is the easiest time to do it. So that's kind of how it started, and then I've looked into a bunch of other things. To go a little bit further on that Norwegian Junior Tour, I actually crunched all of the scoring data for the winners on the tour, both on the men's and women's side, or girls and boys side. And we know how important bogey avoidance is on the tour and how that correlates more to money, ranking points, all this stuff than birdie rate does. And surprise, surprise, it's the same, even at a Norwegian Junior Golf Tour. So the winners at the Norwegian Junior Golf Tour in 2023 earned 75% of their strokes by avoiding bogeys and double bogeys, and only 25% of the strokes from actually shooting under par, like birdies and eagles. So that kind of confirmed that it's true through all levels of golf.
Yeah, coaches can, if they take that attitude or that philosophy, then they're going to work or have their players work on the things that would help you avoid bogeys. Short game, getting into a good position off the tee, what a smart approach into the green, like Scott Fawcett a decade would tell you. So those things are how you avoid it, but it truly is the guy that shoots 79 and a guy that shoots 95 basically make almost the same amount of birdies. It's pretty close, but the one guy does a lot better job. And when you get to high level golf, especially college golf that we see, yeah, avoiding bogeys is huge. Anything else in scoring?
Tons. I mean, I had a player struggle with his putting, and so I looked into putting data, and yeah, I didn't take a huge data set, but I wanted to sort of tell a story through looking into one particular player. I did this in the winter sometime, I think. So I looked into Aaron Baddeley, who at the time had the best strokes gained putting on tour. He was averaging 1.08 or something gained. And I just looked at, okay, let me get 30 plus rounds from him. So I used Data Golf and looked back like 34 rounds, I think it was. It was 34 rounds. And coach, he was averaging over one stroke gained to the PGA Tour average. And what do you think his best strokes gained putting round was? And what do you think his worst strokes gained putting round was in 34 rounds?
You're asking me to guess?
Yeah.
I'll say his best was 3.8. His worst was minus 1.1.
Best was 4, so you're very close. And his worst was -4. Now, of course, this is like just a snippet. I mean, it's 34 rounds, so it's a big portion of the season, but it's one player. But what I'm trying to tell the player I was coaching at the time is like, you gotta accept variance, especially in putting. Strokes gained putting varies a lot because the outcome is binary. The putt either goes in or not. And the best player in the world has a range in strokes gained putting of -4 to +4. And during those 34 rounds, he actually lost strokes putting 8 of the rounds. So like every fourth round, he loses strokes putting. So that was just a simple, quick thing. And like I said, like the newsletter becomes sort of an outlet for me to, yeah, look into sort of what I think will help my players. And that was one of a little like data story, I guess.
I should have probably guessed. I almost got the correct positive strokes gained. I wasn't even close on the negative, but it makes sense because great putters don't allow bad putting rounds to affect them. They don't. It's just I'm a great putter who had a bad putting round, not I'm a bad putter. I really believe that, and accepting variance in your results, especially in putting, is part of the game. It's part of how great putters continue to be great.
Yeah, I try to like coach guys into not throwing everything at sea when you see adversity in our game, because if you're in the game long enough, you will see it. And if you're going to change something every time you have variance go against you, it's just a death sentence for your game, honestly. You got to be able to trust the work that you're doing stay patient through the ups and downs. So that I think that helped the particular player I was thinking about when I was looking into that. But looked into tons of other stuff too. I made sort of I had a newsletter called 71 Scorecards where I sort of made an assumption. I looked at all the schools that I've worked at, which is SFA, Texas Tech, and Baylor. And I looked at the men's and women's teams, and I looked at their tournament schedule for the 23-24 seasons.
Okay.
And so I looked at how many tournaments they had, and I basically said, okay, let me just assume that this is true for college golf, that this amount of tournaments, this amount of competitive days is true for the rest of Division One. And then I had the data of all the rosters. And so I knew how many players there were total, how many teams there were total, and how many players per team there were. So if those tournaments, every tournament plays 5 players, so every tournament is a 5 count 4, there are no individual spots and whatnot. If you average that out over 4 years, every player gets 71 scorecards. So the average in college golf is to get 71 competitive rounds with those that following that logic and that math, which is a lot less than you kind of think. At least most people, I would think, when they get to a campus as a freshman, you kind of like, okay, I'm going to be here forever. But basically, you get 71 chances, and I know you get a few more just because coaches will play in individual tournaments and whatnot. But the point was kind of to show a little bit how precious each competitive opportunity is. And that's something we preach as coaches. And I just wanted to kind of, just take an example of it a little bit. So that was kind of a fun way of getting to something a little bit more tangible for players, I think, when coaches say, hey, your rounds are limited, your chances are limited, make the best of it. And so from there, I made 2 other newsletters where I actually charted all of my scores throughout college, which was both great and humbling. So I kind of displayed my scores visually, and this goes along with Aaron Badley putting example, but your career will go up and down over 4 years. So me personally, I had 124 rounds. So I got quite a bit more than the 71 expected. And my average was 74.29 throughout college. Highest score was an 87, lowest 66, and the most common score was a 72. So, and I kind of displayed it visually, which I thought turned out pretty good, but because it just looks like Bitcoin on steroids. Like you just don't know what's coming, basically. And so I kind of call that newsletter like an average college golfer's career. So, and not to offend anybody else, I like picked my own career and picked my own scores. So that was kind of fun. But then I did the same for Ludwig, which I got the chance to coach. And displayed his scores, which were on another level. He played 122 rounds, so that's very comparable to me. He had a scoring average of 70.21, which is 4 strokes lower than me. His highest score was 80. His lowest score was 63. And do you want to guess the mode, coach? Like what his most common score was? What was Ludwig's most common score in college?
70.
67, which is just a baffling stat, honestly.
67?
67. He shot 67 15 times.
Wow.
But the cool thing is when I charted both mine and his scores, like his scores were up and down as well. So like the lesson here with both those things is you gotta have patience in what we're doing and not throw everything at sea when things go against your will.
I remember when Charles Howell was a junior, so his last year at Oklahoma State, he averaged, at the time, it was the lowest scoring average in history, 69 point something. But in the middle of that spring season in Austin, Texas, he shot an 80. He shot 44 in the back 9 that day. And, if he had given too much credence or too much power to that 80, he might not have finished the season the way he did. But variance, there's an 80 in there in one of the
Yeah.
greatest spring seasons in history. So really, really good information right there.
Yeah, the game kind of does it to you. So, and then like because of my nature as a former college coach, I've looked into a lot of college things. One thing that has always interested me is substitutions because subs were introduced into our game. You could probably tell me, Coach, maybe 5 years
It
ago
was
after Bo
during
Hostler.
the first time they did it was in the 2017 NCAA at Rich Harvest Farms.
Okay, so that's 7 years ago. And it has always fascinated me because that's one pretty direct impact you can have as a coach. And just being through regionals and nationals and stuff myself, I know how much you're thinking of it and how you should use your substitutions and how poorly should a player play before you do it. Like you have so many thoughts as a coach. And so I've charted all of the substitutions from the men's side on the 2023 regionals. And then with the help of David Tennyson, who writes also a Substack, he has great data on a ton of stuff in college, and we've written a couple things together. But we did all of the substitutions from the 2024 regionals. And so we wrote a piece and titled it College Coaches Are Subbing More Often and It's Working. And I get a couple comments back, which were fair, I think, that drawing a conclusion that it's working, maybe a little bit premature, but what we looked into basically is that college coaches are subbing more often. So this year in regionals, there were 84 total substitutions. 62 of them were what we deemed as successful, and that gives us 74% success rate. And what we deemed successful is basically just pretty simply, did the player that was subbed in score better compared to the field than the player who was subbed out in that round? And so 74% of the time that happened. And 46 of those 84 were immediately counting scores for their team, so which is 55%. So I'd argue that it is working on an aggregated level, the substitutions. And it's interesting to see coaches get more comfortable with this because in 2024, just at regionals, there was 62% increase in the usage of subs on the men's side compared to the 2023 regionals. And so I know that's just 1 year to another, but it's interesting. And of course, the players who are subbed out are shooting high scores. The average subbed out scores, depending on the regionals, were from 79.6 to 81. But that's an interesting thing to look into, I think. And David's data kind of made it pretty simple to look into how are coaches doing these things. I like kind of looking into how coaches are making their choices with substitutions, their rosters, and things like that.
Well, we've always subbed, but we used to just sub in between tournaments. So we've always been a substituting deal, but now you're doing it during the tournament to have an impact on that tournament. And actually, I've subbed 3 times at a regional and twice, I think, at conference through the years since they've allowed substitutions in the postseason. It's uncomfortable, but it needs to happen to give your team a better opportunity to win or advance or whatever it may be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And David, back to him, he writes a Substack called 5 Count 4, and he does a lot of good things in college. He's basically a huge just college golf fan, but he also has tons of data from regionals, nationals, all these things. He writes a few historical pieces and stuff. So I'd recommend checking his Substack out as well for college golf interested people. But we used all his data to try and answer a question, which just was maybe a little bit of a lofty goal, but is there more parity in college golf these days? So I feel like I've heard that for years when I was a coach. There's more parity these days. There's more parity these days. and how to look into the data for that, you can kind of there's a lot of ways you can start with that, but we chose to try to answer that question through maybe the most pivotal time as a college golf coach, in my opinion, was regionals, because you're trying to get through the top 5 and get to the national championship, and that determines your season for a lot of teams. And so we looked at just regional data and historical regional data from 1989, I think he has data from. And you could go read that piece on both David's and my Substack, which there's a lot of interesting tidbits there on what seeds get through and that stuff. But basically the short conclusion is yes, there is a lot more parity in college golf, especially on the men's side, but it's also true on the women's side. And who it's true for is a lot of the bubble teams. So the number 1 and 2 seeded teams still have really high advancement rates, but like 3 to 5 or other teams who are quote expected to make it through or seeded to make it through have struggled a lot, and there's a lot more contests from teams who are ranked 6 to 10 for those advancement spots. So that was kind of an interesting thing to look into as well.
Well, this past season, we played the regional at Chapel Hill, and North Carolina would be considered either 1 or 2 of the best teams in the country for sure. So they're hosting. And Clemson, who had gotten in literally on the number for the 500 rule. So I think they were the 10th seeded team, but just barely made it because of the 500 rule. They won the regional. And so they beat North Carolina on their home course, played fantastic. Coach Bird's team played wonderful. But I will say this, we lost to the number 2 team in the country on their home course by only 5 shots, and we were the last team to get out of that regional. There's a lot of parity in college golf now.
I was on the driving range at that time, Coach, and I was frantically just hitting refresh. So happy to see us get through there. That must have been exciting.
It was very exciting.
But yeah, I think that sentiment is true, and I just want to look into it from sort of like, okay, can we look into the data somehow without making it too extensive of a research project? But and yeah, I think another interesting thing, and maybe the last thing I'll mention about things that I've looked into, again, sort of probed by sort of my need or my interests from being a college coach and stuff. I mentioned that I'm really interested into seeing like what coaches choose to do and the decisions coaches make. And so I looked into rosters a lot, and I looked at the midway point in the season, and I looked at the end of the season on both men's and women's side, just to see how are individual players ranked. Is there a correlation between your experience and your chances of being ranked at certain cutoffs individually, making All-American, those things? And what about the teams? Like, how are the best teams composing their rosters? Who are they carrying on the team? So there was a lot of interesting things there, I think. At the midpoint of the season, I found out that 50-year seniors were roughly 7 times more likely than freshmen to be ranked in the top 100. That's on the men's side. And the progression from first-year athlete to fifth-year athlete, there was a progression in all of the cutoffs on the individual side. So what I mean by that is when I looked at the top 50 individually ranked players, the top 100, top 250, top 500, in all those cutoffs, a second-year athlete was more likely than the first-year athletes to be ranked in there. A third-year athlete was more likely than a second-year athlete. And the most likely were fifth-year athletes, which tells you that experience matters in college golf too. There's also like a couple dynamics to that, I think. Really good players tend to stay for their fifth year more than players who aren't starting, or so that sheds a few players who don't have a chance to be ranked at those cutoffs, but still that kind of proves that that experience matters in college golf. And so the interesting thing from there was to look at the teams. So how are the best teams, do they know about this? What did they do about experience? And first of all, the top 25 ranked teams on the men's side, this was at the midpoint of the season. They averaged more players, carrying more players on their roster than the next group of teams, which were ranked 25 to 65. And I chose that cutoff because that's basically teams who make it to regionals. And that group carries more players on their roster than anybody ranked outside 65. So progressively, basically, the higher ranked the team, at least in these buckets, the more players they carry on their rosters. And the interesting thing from there is that about 2/3 of the delta in players from the top 25 teams to the outside 65 were made up of fourth and fifth year athletes.
Mm-hmm.
So they just carry a lot more experience, and that's where the increase in roster size comes from on average.
When we teed off there at Chapel Hill, we had 3 fifth-year seniors in the lineup, first round.
Yep, exactly. Yep. The experience matters. And then on the women's side, the same pattern emerged, but less significant. So better, higher ranked teams carry more players on their roster still, but less of a delta than on the men's side. And experience still matters. But there were more first-year athletes, especially, who perform at a really high level in the women's game, on the women's side. So there are some really, really good recruits coming in and performing right away. And that's more frequent on the women's side than the men's side. And then I'll ask you, just out of this, some fun stuff that came out.
Sure.
What do you think is the most common name in college golf on the men's side? This was last year, 23 to 24. First name.
Most common name, Trey.
Most common name, Jack.
Jack. Okay.
And last name?
Smith.
Exactly right.
Is that right?
And I laugh, and I've been wanting to tell you this because in every made up situation, you, Coach McGraw, say, when you're trying to explain some like situation and a kid on the team, you always use the name Jimmy Smith. And this is as close as you get. Jack Smith. So
well, see, I know what I'm talking about.
Yes, you do, obviously. But what about on the women's side? So if you were a women's coach, which name would you make up there? You always used to say Sally, I feel like.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Sally.
No.
Okay.
So if Jack is the most, like, I kind of made this transfer. Like, if Jack's the most common on the men's side, I was thinking about Jack Nicklaus. Should it be like
Annika?
Yeah, Annika or Lorena, maybe.
Yep.
But it's Lauren is the most common name. And I listed all the top 10 just for fun, both first names and last names. And the most common last name in women's golf is Lee.
Yep. Okay.
So that's just kind of a little side fun thing that came out of it. But yeah, I think that's like the main things that I've found maybe the most interesting is looking into those things. And then I've written some other newsletters here and there, and then I've had the opportunity of writing a few articles for Clipped, which has been great as well. They've gotten published there.
Yeah, I think your work, along with the work David Tennyson is doing, you mentioned him. He and I have had several phone conversations about the history of college golf. I think someday he's going to write the true definitive history of college golf, and he'll probably use a lot of your statistics and your statistical data, or at least the direction the two of you have gone in there at some point, I would think.
David's so good. I mean, he's got all the databases, and he's got them really neatly. Like, it's really easy to crunch the numbers from how he's put a lot of work into creating these historical databases, which is amazing. But let me ask you, Coach, like I found last year, let me find the number. I think the average on the men's side last year, 23-24, was 10.92 players. Mm-hmm. Actually, that's for the top 25. It's less than that for every team, but roster sizes are about 10 players per team, just a shade under that. what's going to happen with this roster change coming in now for
Well,
maybe 25?
it will be less than that, and we don't know when it's going to happen for sure, but probably next fall. We don't know what the number it's going to be, but people are talking about the number being 9. So it's definitely going to go down, which means overnight, once the rule happens, overnight the transfer portal will be full. It'll be a lot of people in there, and it's going to change the way you look at offering a kid a roster spot for books only, or for just a walk-on spot. That'll look different. Um, Evaluations, you're going to have to be way better than you've ever been before to make sure you're getting a kid you think will turn out and will flourish underneath your leadership in your environment. So I think we're just going to have to do a better job, and the logjam in the transfer portal will be amazing for a while.
Yeah, I just wonder how it's all going to play out. I hope it works out for the majority, because there's a lot of teams, especially on the men's side, carrying a lot more than 9 players.
Mm-hmm.
And like we mentioned, like top or higher ranked, better ranked teams carry more, and that's usually teams with a lot of resources, so they're able to carry more players because they're power 5 schools and have practice facilities or whatever. But they're gonna have to cut down on the roster, which is not fun for anybody. I just wonder how it's all going to play out. But I bet you guys aren't talking about much else, the coaches, between you
I can
guys.
tell you, it's dominated our thought process over the fall, because there's so many uncertainties right now and so many things that haven't been answered. So I guess we'll just wait and see when the NCAA comes up with their ruling, and then and it wasn't anything we asked for, and it wasn't anything the players asked for. So we're just going to all have to adjust, adapt, and overcome and figure it out.
Yep.
And I think we will.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah. Well, gosh, Mikkel, this has been incredible. I love catching up with you always, but you gave me a bunch of good information. Doesn't surprise me that you would do that. And gosh, thanks so much for joining me for an hour.
It's always a pleasure, Coach. I hope to stay in touch like we do, so that's great. And if people would like to check out the Substack, I'd love for you guys to do that, to go and subscribe. You basically put in your email, and it's free. I do have some sort of like halfway paid down the article, sort of a paid portion, and that's been just the recruiting articles that I mentioned, just because I've turned it into an ebook, all those chapters. But everything else is free. It's all open. All of these scoring roster, all these newsletters are open and free, so it's open for anybody to check out. Maybe Chris could link the Substack in the description to this podcast or something, to where you guys can kind of find it if you're interested in reading them.
Well, it will have to be Chris doing that, because I'm not the tech guy. You know that, correct?
Yeah, if you're gonna, that would be in like handwritten in your journal or something, which is not very user friendly for the listeners.
It really isn't, but it's very user friendly for me. So that's why I still do it. But Mikkel, thank you so much for spending an hour with me today. It's great catching up. You've given us great information. I really look forward to future research that you're going to be doing as you stay connected to golf. I think it's very interesting and very thought-provoking. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Coach. Thanks for having me on. And like I said, look forward to catching up soon again.
All right, we'll do it. Thanks so much.